Does XDefiant have a future? In my short time playing it, my answer is a tentative yes. And for anyone that knows me, I cannot stand playing modern Call of Duty games. So for me to have a positive opinion of a game in the same space is saying a lot. I'm sure everyone is sick of the COD comparisons, but they are important. With every new Call of Duty release, the gameplay itself is being sacrificed in favor of graphics, realism, grittiness, whatever you want to call it. It's why you can hardly differentiate enemies from the environment, and why your screen is being obliterated by visual recoil. This is where XDefiant can and have differentiated themselves. Enemies are clearly identifiable, and the lighting and visual effects aren't getting in the way of your gameplay. For XDefiant to succeed, it needs to establish itself as the gameplay-focused alternative to Call of Duty, where what you do as the player actually matters. And they're close, but have made some missteps that I hope they'll address. The maps and environments look great, the class system feels enjoyable, each one provides their own unique and useful benefits without feeling too overbearing. The game still feels like a shooter rather than a MOBA. When Overwatch first released, it leaned much more heavily toward the FPS elements, but over time, as they significantly tightened up hitboxes, buffed abilities and introduced newer, ever more ability-focused heroes, the game transformed. Apex Legends has followed a similar trajectory, where weapons are repeatedly nerfed and abilities are repeatedly buffed, and newer Legends have even more powerful and game-changing abilities. In my opinion, XDefiant has found a good balance between gunplay and abilities, but needs to keep power creep in check. Abilities should be useful, but they also shouldn't define every engagement. Let them supplement the FPS combat rather than smother it. The gunplay is a heated topic at the moment. There are some known recoil bugs and general complaints of aim feeling off or floaty. I don't have enough hours in the game to diagnose exactly what's going on, but there is one thing I did which completely changed how the gunplay felt, and it may help you out too. Initially, I was playing with the ADS field of view on consistent, so the FOV is relative to my hipfire field of view. During this time, aiming felt like a real struggle, and I could completely understand all the complaints I'd been hearing about. Oddly enough, and whether this fundamentally changes something or not, I don't quite know yet, but I found that when I changed this to independent, so my ADS will magnify a little further than usual, considering I am on 115 field of view, my aim suddenly felt much better, and I was able to enjoy the game much more without it feeling like I was fighting the game to move my crosshair around. If you have found your aim doesn't feel right, I would highly recommend at least trying out independent ADS field of view. You will need to change your ADS sensitivity if you do this. For reference, I went from 85% on consistent down to about 45 to 50 on independent. The recoil on assault rifles, and lesser so on the SMGs, has an annoying problem. This has nothing to do with the recoil reset bugs, but rather the recoil pattern. For example, every assault rifle has a recoil pattern that heavily leans to the right. Honestly, I don't really understand this decision. It seems like a great way to make people feel like the aiming mechanics are broken. Having one-sided recoil like this makes tracking a target to the right feel like your sensitivity is too fast, and tracking a target to the left makes it feel like it's too slow. Just have a vertical recoil seed with random or pseudo-random horizontal recoil that you need to control. Having it lean to one side is just asking for trouble. The visual recoil, while not as bad as Call of Duty, is still over the top. When you are firing at someone, it feels good to know where your reticle is, so your aim feels more deterministic, rather than something that just happens. The excessive visual recoil shaking the reticle around removes your sense of agency. Aiming for precise headshots can be difficult, not because you can't aim well enough, but because you can't see where you need to be aiming. The recoil bugs where it recenters you to the wrong spot are obviously not intended, so I won't elaborate on those, they'll be fixed soon enough. I haven't had enough time in-game to completely explore the weapon attachments, but from my experience so far, it has been a little underwhelming. The bars indicating firepower, accuracy and so on seem to wildly and inconsistently change, so they aren't a good reference, and they suffer from that classic problem of balancing the pros and cons, which often doesn't feel great as the player. I read an attachment, get excited about what it does, and as soon as I see the extra ADS time, it's like, oh, okay, never mind. I get that you don't want to make weapons feel too strong through attachments, but I have to believe there's a better way to go about it. Like only having positives but having them in smaller magnitudes, or more obvious trade-offs like reducing fire rate for having more damage. The problem should be a good one, where the player feels like there's too many good options and only a few attachment slots for them, so they have to decide what they value most. At the moment, it feels like you're afraid of the attachments, rather than being excited about what they can provide. The one-shot kill to the body sniper rifles are a mistake in my opinion. It is so hard to balance a weapon like this, and when you try, you end up with snipers that take forever to scope in, and feel extremely unwieldy, which doesn't feel great for the sniper. It may be a controversial take, but it would have been a brave choice to simply ignore this weapon archetype. The alternative would be to add a sniper that feels great, so a healthy scope in time, minimum sway, or even no hold breath mechanic, but make it only kill in one shot to the head. The current snipers aren't necessarily OP, and that's besides the point, they're not fun to play against. Just about every game that includes a sniper struggles with making it fun to play and fun to verse. If you think about it on a fundamental level, it is bizarre that the highest damage weapon also has the longest range. If we lived in a hypothetical world where sniper rifles miraculously didn't exist, there is no way a game dev would create a weapon that one-shots across the map, without it being some power weapon that is deliberately strong for this purpose. Okay, getting back on track, the respawning in this game is excellent. You have almost no downtime, and very rarely does a spawn feel unfair. During the match, it's go go go, always fighting, moving and playing, which is great for this style of game. The heal timer feels spot on, you don't need to hide and cry for an excessively long time to regenerate, and the healer still feels useful in speeding up this process. My biggest gripe so far would probably be the massive downtime between games. While this isn't exactly true, it feels like I spend just as much time in the post-game and lobby than I do actually playing the game. I don't know what's going on in the back end, but if there is time to shave off this process, I would love to see them speed it up as much as possible. Right now, it's just enough time to not be able to properly manage and configure your loadouts, while still feeling long enough that you feel the need to do something with that time. I'd rather play a few matches back to back, than leave the lobby and manage my loadouts in my own time. In regards to movement, I've never really been one to push these mechanics to their limit. I care more about aim, but even with your general movement, I think it could use some work. I'm glad it doesn't have instant acceleration, but right now it feels too delayed. You input a movement, then there's a delay before you get going. The time from starting a movement to reaching max speed could remain the same. I think they just need to make the curve more linear. Right now it feels like you barely move at all, then suddenly you're at max speed. My final thought for now, to ensure the future of XDefiant, would be to lean into user-generated content. Allow players to host their own games, create their own maps and rule sets, giving players some agency over how they play the game. If done well, it can create an engine that constantly generates content and player-driven stories without putting as much strain on official content releases, seasons, battle passes, patches, and so on. And that'll about do it for now. I look forward to putting some more time into this game, and I genuinely hope it does succeed. FPS gaming has been in a rough patch for a while now, so a good gameplay and mechanics driven FPS would be very welcome. If you've had a chance to play XDefiant, let me know your opinion in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, be sure to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.